Good job, Harry. Thank you. So this being a minister thing is kind of an interesting occupation. There are times when I see something on Facebook or I read something and I get really inspired by it. And I decide I'm going to do a talk about it, so I do a lot of research and I bring in the spiritual lesson for it. And I try to add something personal or something funny in order to really bring the point home. And at times like that, I consider myself kind of a teacher. Maybe not so much a minister, but a teacher, imparting a spiritual lesson in what I hope is an interesting and relevant way. Then there are times when I appear to be living my topic, or it is living me. And that was the case this week. I don't know about the rest of you, but life just feels kind of unsettled right now. Anybody besides me? Okay, yeah. I heard somebody describe it as being kind of like on shifting sands. It's just like I can't quite get my foothold, you know? There are several areas of my life where I have this feeling like I'm trying to push the river, like I'm trying to make things happen. And then experiencing this extreme frustration when the river refused to be pushed, or things that I'm trying to make happen aren't happening. So then, of course, my natural tendency is to try even harder. If I just push the river this way instead and try a little harder, it's going to turn. Or if I tweak my approach just a little bit and I torque it, and then it's going to work, right? Pretty soon, I'm exhausted, and I'm angry, and I'm out of sorts, and the river still isn't pushed, and the thing still isn't happening. So that's what happened for me this week. And although the talk title is Let God Drive, the message behind it is actually surrender. Now, for most of us, the idea of surrender, we don't like it because it reminds us of a sign of weakness or of giving up. Seems counterintuitive to people like us. We're doers, we are creators, we are take charge, we are river pushers, by golly. But the truth is, surrender, true surrender, is a sign of strength and of faith and of trust. Surrender in this case means a letting go of the attachment to the outcome. It means releasing the stress and the frustration and the worry and the concern and the fear and the anger and the machinations of trying to make something happen. It means trusting in this intelligent and orderly universe, which is always working for us, even when it appears that it isn't. So our founder, Ernest Holmes, had something to say about that. He said, spiritual faith is unshakable conviction, a surrender of the mind, the will, and the imagination to the belief in an invisible agency which can and will respond to us. The surrendering of the mind, the will, and the imagination to a belief in an invisible agency which can, will, and I'm going to add does, respond to us. Now that does not mean, folks, that we stop taking action, that we cease participating in our lives, that we give up trying. It simply means that we let go and let God. And we go like this. Now, of course, thank you. As we've established many times, particularly during this series of talks, we're doing a series of talks right now based on a book called Thou Shalt Not Suffer. And as we've established, the God that we're talking about here is not the guy up in the sky. You know the one I'm talking about, that pissed off guy that may or may not have our back, depending on his mood? You know what I'm talking about? It means letting go and allowing the infinite intelligence, the wisdom, and the potential of the life force energy. That's what I choose to call God. The life force energy to work in our lives. Because when we believe that we live in a friendly universe that works within an intelligent system based on the law of cause and effect. If you really want to know what I'm talking about, we'll be doing classes here pretty soon. We live in a friendly universe working within an intelligent system based on the law of cause and effect. When we understand that, we believe that, we can absolutely have faith that it is working for us by working through us. So when we participate in our lives, by doing the things that are in front of us to do, by paying attention to the opportunities and the activities that appear, and still surrender our perceived outcome, we are working in partnership with the divine. Is this making sense? It's making sense to me. Okay, good. It made a lot of sense to me the other day. So, when we perceive an ultimate outcome, we've got an idea in mind of how it's supposed to happen, right? It is also entirely possible that something even greater is awaiting us. Even though we have that outcome in mind, it is possible that something greater is waiting for us. Mark Anthony Lord, who wrote our book that we're studying right now, said it this way: ask, what else might this vast universe have in store for me that I haven't even conceived? What could be better than this? What's possible right now if I surrender? So ask that, what's possible right now? And then surrender. Because when we are living in the flow in that way, and we are completely open to all the possibilities that are everywhere, we act as a magnet to attract the right situations and the right people to us to bring us the right outcome. It's when we try to push the river, when we try to make things happen according to what we think is right, instead of being in the flow of the divine, that we end up with those feelings of unsettledness that I talked about. And often, when we try to force something into completion, the result is a forced and unsatisfying and oftentimes unsuccessful outcome. Yes?
Yeah.
Yes! Leland totally gets what I'm talking about. Think about those times. Maybe you have never done this. Maybe you've never done this. When you've pushed, forced, tweaked, bullied, and coerced something to happen in a certain way, in a certain time frame, only to then say, that was not quite what I expected. That's not quite what I pictured. Yeah? Now, for many of us, part of the fear about surrendering is that it means letting go of when, the time frame, of when we think things are supposed to happen. And I so get that. You know, first of all, I'm an instant gratification person, and second of all, I'm not patient. I want what I want when I want it. Wait, wasn't that last week's talk? And yet, the times that I have surrendered, usually because I'm at my wit's end and don't know what else to do, I'm so pleased with the results that I wonder why I don't do it at the start rather than at the end. Mark Anthony suggests surrendering the who, what, where, when, and how. Surrendering that. He said this, remember, the universe is a yes machine, and it brings your personal God great joy to serve, sustain, and satisfy you. The reason this can be challenging is because you have to surrender the heavy lifting. I'm going to read that again because it was a message to me. Sorry, you all can listen if you want, but it's a message to me. Remember, this universe is a yes machine, and it brings your personal God great joy to serve, sustain, and satisfy you. The reason this can be really challenging is because you have to surrender the heavy lifting. Jesus said the same thing when he said, it is the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. It's the Father's great pleasure to give you the kingdom, but not if you don't allow it. If we keep wrenching control back, thinking that we with our finite minds know how to do it best, we can't possibly gain access to the kingdom. At best, it's a tiny little fiefdom of just one person. Now, possibly, the greatest place where we feel the resistance to surrendering and allowing is when it comes to other people and what we think they should or should not be doing. Anybody? How many times have we suffered because the people in our lives are not doing what we think that they should be doing? If he or she or they would just listen to me, their life would be so much better. But we get really wrapped around the axle about it, don't we? We become very attached to our advice. We get very attached to our opinion and the outcome that we think it should have, right? Right. And yet what we know is that no one ever changes because of someone else's attachment or opinion. Not really changes. They may stop doing something or they may start doing something to stay in our good graces for a while. But unless the change is truly theirs, in their heart and in their mind, it's only temporary. And then when things go back to the way they were, we're wounded and we hurt and we suffer. We do, because we are attached. And yet, if we trust the wisdom and the intelligence of the divine, and if we embrace the idea that everybody is on their own spiritual path and that they are having their life-growing experiences, we can surrender our attachment to their outcome and avoid the suffering that comes along with it. It really comes down to whether or not we trust. That we trust that that we live in a loving and friendly and orderly and affirming universe. That the life force energy from which everything comes, that we are a part of it. That we truly are the beloved of the beloved. Put your hand on your heart and say, I am the beloved of the beloved. I am the beloved of the beloved. Because if we believe that as wholeheartedly as we possibly can, then we surrender. And it makes it so much easier when we surrender. Many years ago, when I first got sober, I've been sober almost 30 years, so you understand. This was like maybe even 30 days into my sobriety, right? And I was going to meetings, and I was doing a lot of what they told me to do to stay sober. But this particular night, I was having a rough time of it. I wasn't drinking, and there was no alcohol in the house, but I was suffering emotionally and spiritually, but I didn't know it at the time. And I remembered that there were people in meetings, and they were talking about a particular prayer that was in the big book, what they call the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It was called the Third Step Prayer. And even though I didn't have any idea what I was doing, nor did I have much belief in God at that time, I decided to try it. So I got out my big book and I looked it up, and I found it there in the third step. And they told me to get down on my knees. Okay, you know what? I was pretty desperate at that point, so I got down on my knees. And I repeated this prayer to whoever it was that might have been listening at that time. And the prayer is, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I might better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Now, of course, I didn't use this language. I wouldn't use this language now, because I am praying now to the God of my understanding, which is within me. But I didn't know that then. So I said that prayer on my knees in desperation. And you know what? I felt a little bit better. A little bit better. There's no lightning bolts. There was no voice resounding from on high telling me what to do. I just felt a little bit better. And then the phone rang. And the voice on the other end of the phone said, Mandy? I said, no, this is Pat. And she said, oh, I was trying to reach Mandy. And her voice sounded kind of familiar to me. She sounded like one of the matriarchs of the Friday night AA meeting that I went to. So I took a chance and I said, is this Betty from Friday night? And she said, why, yes, it is. And I said, this is Pat. I'm one of the newcomers. And she said, well, hello, dear. I was trying to reach Mandy, who's married to another Pat. I must have dialed the wrong number. How are you? And I was able to talk to her. And I was able to get some relief from my suffering. Now, you could chalk that up to a coincidence with the fact that it's a pretty small town. But I have no doubt in my mind but that it was a friendly and supportive universe answering my call because I surrendered. Ernest Holmes said this about surrender. We should awake to the living presence of the eternal God within each of us and enter into a realization of a new peace and joy. As we come to surrender all littleness and all fear and doubt, that great river of life flowing from the mind of God will renew our vigor, remake our strength, ennoble our being, heal our bodies, and bring peace to our hearts. To close our service today, I've asked Amy to come up and teach us a chant. This chant was written by Reverend Christy Snow from North Carolina. And I think that you will understand why I'm asking her to sing it today. And once she sings it once or twice, we're going to sing it together. I surrender. I trust and I know that as I surrender, I fall into the arms of love. Surrender. I trust and I know as I surrender, I fall into the arms of love. I surrender. I trust and I know as I surrender, I fall into the arms of love. I surrender. I trust and I know as I surrender, I fall into the arms of love. So let's go within and think about this idea of surrender. And like the picture of our screen, just picturing ourselves falling back and being buoyed up by ribbons and butterflies, or by ocean or loving arms. Whatever mental picture seems to work for you. And think about that situation that may be happening right now that feels like pushing the river. And just picture as you take your hands off the controls, take your hands and take them out of the river from pushing the river. And you say, I surrender. And as I surrender, I fall into the arms of love. I turn this over to the infinite intelligence, to the orderliness of the universe, of God, of spirit, of life. And I know that I am being buoyed up. I am being supported. I am being lifted to a higher idea, to a greater outcome. And I trust. Sing it.